Welcome to episode 130 of the Left Behind Game Club. This week, we tackle part 2 of The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. Without further ado, let's get into it.
You're listening to the Left Behind Game Club.
Welcome to another episode of the Left Behind Game Club, our never-ending attempt to make sure that no game is left behind. I am your host, Michael Ruffalo. On today's episode, we are picking up part 2 of Breath of the Wild, where we'll be covering the last two divine beasts, Ganon, and some of our favorite little side quests and moments throughout the game. But joining me, before I get into any of that, two good friends who are here for part 1, the man, the myth, the chief gun officer of the Left Behind Game Club himself, Mr. Mohammed Murtadi.
Thanks, Mike. Zelda part 2 with some good buddies. Let's go. I'm excited.
Let's go. And also joining us, special guest, friend of the show. You heard him in part 1, Mr. Galen Havey.
How you guys doing? I'm excited to keep talking about a great game that just keeps on giving to us.
There we go. I'm so excited to keep talking about another great game. Let us do a quick recap of what we covered in the first episode. For anyone that hasn't listened to it, I highly suggest you go and take a listen. But what we covered in that first episode were the first two divine beasts. I believe that was... Anyone remember?
We had Va Ruta and Va Rudania.
There we go. Yes. And so if you're going by sight, Va Ruta is the big elephant divine beast, and Va Rudania is the salamander, the one that you fight in the lava pits. And they both give you two special powers. And I think this episode we're going to talk a little bit more about those special powers that they give you, because this is the one where I felt we had the best powers. Va Medoh and Va Naboris give you some really fun things to do. So now that we've covered a bit of what we talked about in the last episode, again, highly recommend going back to check out that first one. Let's hop into, I think, one of the staples of any Zelda game, and that is getting through the Lost Forest to find the Great Deku Tree and getting the Master Sword. How did we go about doing that?
Did you guys get it right away? Because for me, this was like my end of... Like, I did all of the Divine Beasts, and that was at the point when I was able to earn, like, the Master Sword, essentially. When did you guys kind of tackle it?
I came across it, like, completely organically, which I'm very proud to say. But, yeah, I was doing some other stuff, like, off somewhere else in the map. I don't remember what. And all I remember is, like, the spot that's, like, essentially, I think is just south of where the Great Forest is, or the Lost Forest, has, like, a bit of height to it. And I just remember looking down and seeing this, like, misty forest and just being so intrigued and just stopping everything I was doing and being
wow,
I'm going to go over there. Yeah.
Yeah, so you saw it from above. Like, you actually, like, saw it as, like, a destination, like, in the world, and then just went up to it and then found the Master Sword?
If my memory serves me correctly,
wow,
yeah,
cool.
That's how it went.
So I did it early on in the game because I found the forest, I found the Master Sword, and then I realized, I will kill myself if I don't have enough hearts to do this. And so one of the things that I did was, at that point, I was like, okay, I just need to go find every little shrine along the way. Because my view in playing games like this, any big RPG, is let me grind out a bunch of these little things that end up making my experience that much better. Let me get all of the best armor, all of those other things, and then steamroll the actual bosses, right? The actual, like, mainline story. There are so many big RPGs that I've spent hundreds, maybe even 1,000 of hours in, that I have not beaten the main story quest because I am too busy doing all of the other things preparing for it, and then life gets in the way. And so I did this pretty early. I completed a bunch of shrines to get enough hearts, and then I grabbed the sword. I did it fairly early on. I think it was before I completed the last two divine beasts, but I think I had it for 3 divine beasts.
Wow,
if I'm being honest.
Cool.
Yeah, I believe I was kind of in the middle. I don't remember exactly in my playthrough when I did it, but I do remember I had already done at least one Divine Beast, and I kind of came across it, like I said, organically. And one of the like I came across the forest organically, but I did not figure out how to get through it and how to get the sword out organically. I had to use a guide for that.
Got it.
Yeah. So before you can get to the Master Sword, which, very typically is stuck in the ground, you gotta, your little Link has to be King Arthur, and only the true can pull it out of the stone. You need to get through the Lost Woods, and the Lost Woods can be a massive pain. They are a forest with a huge amount of mist that if you take a wrong turn, you get spit back right at the beginning of it. Did you guys have trouble getting through it, or was it a pretty easy go?
When I eventually was like looking for the Master Sword, I feel like it was fairly straightforward, because like the mechanic was essentially like, as you're drifting, if the fog kind of consumes you, that means you've gone too far. And like I found that it gave you, if you're glued to like your Switch or your TV, you can see when that kind of picks up, and as long as you're not reckless just running around and go step by step, I think I found it my first try. I don't think I got spit back, but I did get close with the whiteout of the screen coming up pretty close. Didn't find it too hard though. Mike, what about you, Galen?
Yeah, like I did not clue into me right away. I must have just not been paying him enough attention, but I did need a guide to get through it. I'm not ashamed to admit that, because I was happy with what came out the other side, but it was not intuitive for me.
Yeah, I think I had a very similar experience to Mo in that, I started cluing in on the design clues that the screen would white out, but I definitely had a bunch of moments where I was kicked back to the beginning.
Oh.
Yep.
I think one of the things that I picked up visually along the way was that the different torches that were set up that you needed to walk towards, the wind would blow the embers in the direction that you were supposed to go.
Cool.
So as long as you like tended to go in that direction, which I think like visually they're trying to cue you in that way anyway, definitely not something I think you would like normally pick up. You'd be able to get through it without too much issue. What I did find annoying was once I had figured it out the first time and got into the Korok forest and found the Master Sword but wasn't able to pull it out, every time that I had to go back, I just found it super annoying to have to like figure out, I have to turn here, I have to go this way, I have to do that. Yeah. It just became a bit of a chore the more that I felt I needed to go back to it.
Sorry, I didn't catch it. Did you get the shrine that was there?
I didn't do it on the first go.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, exactly. Once you complete that shrine, it's easy to teleport right into it, but it was not something I had the forethought to do.
Okay. Yeah, that's my first thing. That's literally, if I hear a shrine and it's nearby, I have to like get it. I'm like, I don't want to walk all the way over here or fly all the way over here. I'm like, this is my like checkpoint.
I think like the game trained me to do that at some point. At some point, it not only was it like, let's go and find and complete every shrine, so that way, we get the hearts, we get the stamina, etc. But I think it also just trained me to be like, this is the easiest way to travel around the map. So just complete as many of these as possible, or get as many of these as you can, so that way you can travel around pretty quickly and easily.
Yeah, and especially like near like once you've got like a good chunk of shrines, let's say you've done a couple divine beasts or a few of them, you can almost like throw a dart on a dartboard on the map to where they're gonna be, because they're like so equally dispersed around the map. Whereas if you see like, you have this giant area where we have no shrines, go like take a stroll down there, you're gonna see 3. Like it's the map's pretty cool like that, where every single part kind of has like a mini built-in geographic like checkpoint location to load into.
I couldn't echo that more. I think this map is so well designed. There are things at every turn, and it seems so well put together. There's such diversity. It just amazing. I think the only weak part is where there's these massive valleys out of the middle of nowhere that gatekeep one section from the other, that ends up making you forced to cross a bridge somewhere.
Yeah. Totally. I had a quick question then, since like all of my divine beast fights didn't have the Master Sword like involved. I was always like swapping random weapons and trying my best. How did you guys feel fighting any of the divine beasts with the sword? Because like if you got it now before like any of the like last couple, like how were they just easy peasy swipe and they're dead, or was it hard still?
It was a relatively powerful weapon, especially like for some of the lesser enemies in the game. It could wipe them out pretty quickly, but I didn't find that it made the experience any better or worse. Like it I think the base damage on it was like 30, and then on Guardians it would do like 60. For the Guardians, it helped out a lot, but for most of the enemies in the game, you could find other weapons that could perform just as well. And as we'll talk about later, like for some of the bosses, I don't really feel like it impacted me too much in the fight with them.
I totally echo that, Galen. Like, I didn't think it was an especially strong weapon. I think one of the things we should mention is that the Master Sword ends up glowing like a laser beam, like a lightsaber, anytime you're near Ganon's Blight. And it ends up being, like Galen said, especially strong against those creatures, but not so strong that I felt like it was an OP weapon by any means. The one key unique feature of it is that, like every weapon, it breaks, but it restores itself. It comes back. I was actually surprised that it breaks. I thought it was going to be the one weapon that did not break.
Yeah.
I thought it was just, this is like the adamantium sword.
Yeah, they probably were like testing it, and they're like, okay, this is going to be like a cheat code. Like, we have to do something to disable it. Like, it can't be just a better than average sword the entire game. This is like its little quirk that makes you still calculate if it's worth bringing along or not. Or like using in a fight.
Imagine what the game would be like after you get the Master Sword if it doesn't break.
Oh.
Like you wouldn't use anything
Exactly.
I do think that was a really smart design decision in the end, just because I feel like the fact that it does break still kind of forces you to go look for other weapons and pick other stuff up and experiment a little more, because it is going to become useless at some point. So I kind of, as much as they were probably like, oh, it'd be really cool if this was the one weapon that didn't break at all, I feel like it was the right decision to make it so it does have like a bit of a cooldown time.
I'm gonna be silly for asking this one. So like there's the Master Sword. Link has like a fancy shield in all of the games. Sorry for my Zelda ignorance. Is there a Master Shield? Sorry if this is dumb.
I think me and Mike are thinking the same thing. That's something we're probably going to get to later.
Okay. I didn't get no Master Shield. I just used whatever hunk of wood or metal was laying around from like the Boblookins.
Honestly, I'm really happy that you brought that up now, because it does kind of point to. I'll touch on it, I'm sure, and maybe Michael touch on it too.
I think you should just get into it. Galen.
Okay. The one, like, I love this game with all my heart. The one flaw that we're gonna get to is the approach up to Ganon's castle. Rivali's Gale kind of makes a lot of that not necessary, and so what that does is it makes it so you don't explore a lot of the castle, because that shield is located like in the underbelly of that castle. If you go, so that's like
it's in the prison.
Yeah, so if you go like explore Ganon's castle, eventually you'll find it.
Okay.
But for a lot of people, they didn't end up finding it because like they either used like Rivali's Gale or they just went up like a completely different route and just completely missed it.
I will tell you all about how I swam up all the waterfalls as we get into Ganon's castle.
Okay, I'm excited because I had no idea. I just always seen a shield everywhere. I'm like, I didn't see anything, and I wasn't playing the traditional way. I guess I was just kind of grinding and trying to like finish off like the bad guys. So maybe
I agree with you though. I agree. I'm kind of surprised there wasn't like a built-in story moment with Epona or Epona or whatever you want to pronounce it. There wasn't a built-in story moment with the shield. The only one that they really force you through is the Master Sword for obvious reasons.
Kind of cool to know, though.
Yeah, but before we can get to Ganon in the castle and how we approach that, we have to get through the next two, or the final two divine beasts. Let's start with the Rito village and Medoh, the great bird divine beast. What do you guys remember about that setup?
I liked it. I like Medoh. I think probably my favorite. It was the first one that I completed in terms of the Divine Beast, primarily because the walkthrough that like kind of was giving me my suggestions and explaining what all of them did. They're like, this one's generally accepted as like the first or second one you do. In a nutshell, once you kind of hop on it, its mechanic is like, because it's a bird and it's flying, like when it tilts, things kind of like happen differently for you there. So like it's a giant mechanical bird that tilts. It gave me total Shadow of the Colossus vibes, because there's that one like bird that's flying around and you have to jump on its wings and traverse its wings and dodge stuff. A lot of these divine beasts like felt like Colossi, I guess, but this one was probably the most, just because of like you having to deal with like the wind and running around.
So speaking of Shadow of the Colossus, another fight that kind of reminded me of that game. Did you guys ever fight any of the stone talus in the game?
What's the stone talus?
Oh, I know what you mean now. Those are these like the giant stone like obelisk or not obelisks like golems with like the gems on their back, right?
Yeah.
You had to have Mo.
On the island, I think there was one guy or like one of the.
There's a few throughout the game, so essentially they're just these big. You don't notice them at first. They're just rocks in the ground, and then as you walk by them, they start to get up, and then
it's like surprise, you're in a battle.
Yeah, and then I think probably like my favorite music plays in the game. Like the theme for that battle is like there's some fun stuff going on there, and I love it. But you can't cause any damage to them just by running up and attacking them. You have to climb them, and they're not very big. But you do have to climb them and then get on top and then essentially smack their weak point, which is, like Mike said, like a little gem right on top of them.
Oh, wow.
The other thing you can do is use a bow and arrow. Because bow and arrow will allow you to hit them with like an explosive arrow and, take them down.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then once you defeat them, you get all of these gems just start popping out of the ground right next to them. In the same way that when you defeat the big, like, what are they called? The one-eyed ogres? I'm blanking what those are called. But when you defeat those giant one-eyed ogres, they also drop like toenails and a bunch of other things, weapons. I always carried around one of those metal oil shaft like cranks as a weapon because they were so good for breaking rock. Like anything I needed to like mine along the way, and any of those like stone guys. It was like hyper durable against them.
Yeah, I always kept like a beater giant hammer, and that was my like harvesting one. Like there's like a stone mallet or something.
Yes.
Or like a pickaxe. Whenever I saw one of those, I'm like, you're definitely staying here. You're my utility. Do you remember in the first couple Pokemon when you have that HM Pokemon that holds all of your HMs? Because
HM cut.
Yeah, cut.
HM surf.
Yeah, surf, strength, all of them in one Pokemon. That hammer was my utilitarian like Pokemon.
I totally relate. I did the same thing with like a woodcutter's axe or a battle axe. I was like, I'm not wasting my good little swords on trees that I need to cut down for wood.
Yeah.
I'm just going to hold on to this woodcutter's axe and have one use for it.
Did anyone leave a slot for a torch? Because I did. I thought it was going to be useful, and it never was. It never was, and that was what Zelda did to me. It kept me holding a torch for no reason.
The workaround for that is you always keep like a wooden club that doubles as a weapon, and you can always light it on fire.
Yeah. So I wish I would have used more of that. Like little. That was like very late game when I discovered all this. I think it's like stuff that you learn and it makes you want to go back. Kind of. It's one of those like, I should have did this more, and this game kind of allows you to get a chance to do it.
Yeah. So I guess getting back to Medoh, you end up seeing Rivali, who is like the ancient hero of the Rito people, and they guide you through the Medoh experience, trying to get everything back to where it should be. Medoh, I don't know what it was, but was the divine beast that gave me the best sense of scale. So I totally relate to the like Shadow of the Colossus like comparison for that one in particular.
Totally.
But once you get through that, you end up getting to Windblight Ganon, which for me I think was actually one of the like easiest forms of Ganon to get through. I think the easiest one was on I'm blanking on the name of the divine beast, but the giant elephant one. This one was like a close second to me.
Yeah, this one for me was like, I did this in the reverse of Mo. This is my last divine beast I came across, and like at this point I had learned basically all the mechanics in the game, all the major ones, and had learned my lesson on coming into a fight prepared with arrows. So I went into every basically major battle I thought I might get into with like way too many arrows, and was more than prepared for this guy.
Okay, yeah, because this one was the arrow one. It like propels you up or whatever, and you can like slow motion arrow shot.
Yeah.
Okay, so I played on the Switch like console itself, like the handheld mode essentially. There was they added in like when you tilt the device, you can kind of aim your arrow a little bit better. Mike, did you get that too with like the console, like playing with just the Joy-Cons and like a Pro controller or something?
So yeah, with the Pro controller, it also has that element in it, the motion control. I found that super frustrating. I thought like I don't know, like it forced me to like hold my hands incredibly still, and I don't know why I didn't want to go into the settings and turn off motion controls.
I knew there was a way.
There's totally a way to do it. You could go in and turn off the motion controls, but I also remember moments where I was like, trying to lift something with the magnesis and like lifting it with my hands too to help like control it.
Did it work?
Oh yeah, it totally works.
Okay.
Totally helps. But it definitely caused me a lot of like pain and issue when I was trying to shoot the bow.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my least favorite mechanics, and it was just I had like an initial moment earlier. I'm like, okay, I get it. It's adding a new like quirky way. I'll get better at it when the game goes on. But like more than halfway along into the game, I'm like, this is something I could do without. But I just like you, I didn't go into the settings. But if there was a way to disable it, and if someone hasn't completed the game and are annoyed with arrows, I'd probably disabling that will help you. Because it could literally deviate where you're pointing if you're like laying in a weird way or you're playing like slouched or whatever. So yeah, not a huge fan of it.
Totally. So I don't know what was your I think Mo described the I'm blanking on the name of the fish people. Do you guys remember the name of the Zoras? Yes, the Zoras. You described the Zoras as like bird people in the last episode. But the Rito are the real bird people in this game. What was your take on the Rito? Because I know they've been in other games before, but this is the first one where they struck me as kind of just like, kind of dicks, Like they were all cocky, like fighter aces. They reminded me of like
Top Gun?
Falco.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Literally felt like, and I don't mean this as like a pun on them being able to fly, but like they felt like they were above you.
Yeah, exactly. That's how they behave.
Yeah, it was all like competition. All like, hey, we're gonna beat you. Like, and you're not good. You can't fly. Haha. It's like, wait, what? Like, I don't have wings. Like, chill.
Yeah, exactly.
Just you wait till I get this Rivali's Gale.
Yeah. By the way, Rivali's Gale, I probably would say is my favorite. I'd say it's my favorite, most used ability. So like, he did have a reason to brag because like once he gets you like hooked up with the Rivali's Gale, you're like, I get it now. I'm better than all of these people.
Turns out flying is actually pretty cool.
So yeah, like I guess we should explain that. I think we mentioned once you complete each Divine Beast, you get the Spirit of the Champion, and they provide you some little power up or benefit to use. Rivali's Gale is the one that you get when you complete Von Medoh, and that if you hold the jump button, ends up creating this like gust of wind underneath you and shooting you like into the air, like 50 feet, 100 feet or something.
It's a good chunk of distance. Yeah.
Like a good amount in the air, and allows you to just glide wherever you need to go or grab onto a wall that was otherwise like too high and out of reach.
Yeah.
Or you might not have had enough stamina to climb. It was one of the most used. For me, it was probably the most used like ability that I had. I'm not sure I used the shield ability. I'm not sure I used the others nearly as much, but I found Rivali's Gale to be the most useful champion spirit of them all.
Totally. There's like some times when like I'm like, okay, I have to get all the way there. That's like 3 Rivali Gale charges, and then I can probably walk the next little bit. I'm just like calculating in my head. I'm like, I can get really far, but I need at least 4 jumps for this one kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think the other important thing too is like all that came with like 0 cost of stamina too, so you could just like bust it out really quickly, and like if you were in a fight and you were doing so well, you could just like
good use.
Like push the eject button and get out of there.
Just nope right out of there. Yeah, I such a great ability. I was so happy when they gave that to me because I felt like, oh, I don't have to climb to the highest point in this area and glide over to wherever it is. Like I feel like I actually can use my glider a lot more now. And I didn't also feel like I had to cheese it by creating a fire on the ground and some grass and using the updraft to like get wherever I needed to go.
I'm wondering if maybe we discovered like, you know how like a lot of people will play this and say, maybe I don't get it, or maybe I don't want to play it because maybe it does seem too big and nothing's explained. It could be the suggestion everyone should have to be like, did you get the bird Divine Beast yet? Just be specific to someone who hasn't played it. And if they say no, then you're like, do the bird. And then when they get the jumping ability, then they're like, oh, okay, I get this game. I get the scale because now I can traverse it. Whereas let's say they do the first 2 Divine Beasts and are still walking around places. I can see someone wanting to pull their hair out if they didn't get the hint earlier.
Yeah, kind of like I played most of this game without a guide. I mean, I went to it for certain points, but I do remember like the few times when I did consult YouTube to help me out with something, and then like I had no idea this ability existed, and then you just see somebody use it in a fight, and you're like, wait, that's
what?
a thing? Like that would have changed my life.
Totally.
Yeah, sweet. So, okay. I think we've covered the Von Medoh and the Rito people. Let's move on to the next divine beast, which is the Gerudos and Von Naboris. What was your experience there, guys? What was your like initial opinion getting over there?
This one was like a roller coaster, but it was fun. But like I got lost. I didn't know what to do. I like had to do so many walkthroughs. But in a nutshell, this is like the divine beast that's in the sand, and you meet like essentially two groups of people to like get it started. I guess I'll warm it up. So it's essentially how you are introduced to it is the village that like holds the divine beast. I believe it's female only. And obviously, being Link, you don't have your friend Zelda to get you like into the door, so you have to find a way to, I guess, break into the village. And the best way is you pretty much throw someone some coin, they give you a dress and like a face covering, and boom, you are girl Link.
Yeah, it was. I thought that was so funny. Like, I think this was the area that felt like it had the most personality to me, and was the most like world building, because I remember the Gerudo from other Zeldas, but I don't remember them having this much like personality, culture, etc. I thought it was so cool to see this like gigantic warrior Amazonian like women like town and tribe where they had these like interesting customs that was like, oh no, men are not allowed in here anywhere.
Yeah, it's like the Valkyries kind of like totally.
Yeah,
it's like the exact same thing, but it's like the Zelda world version of them.
And I loved all the little side quests around the town, like having to like, you know, sneak in on some of the conversations and overhear what's being said and, you know, trick your way into X, Y, and Z place. Like all of the different ways that you had to like maneuver it as like a man in this woman's world. I thought it was pretty funny.
Totally. Did you guys know exactly where to get the costume or whatever, or was it just me skipping the like chat to like not realize?
I think it was you skipping the chat.
I was convinced because I was walking around that desert like going and trying to figure out who to talk to. It kept telling me to go to talk to this person, and yeah. Anyways, in a nutshell, they're on top of a house and not standing in front of you where they should be.
Yeah, there's a little oasis that you get to before you get to the Gerudo village, and that's the oasis where they give you the clothing. It's also where I think you get like the first taste of all the things around here. Like there's desert watermelon, and there's like these walrus that you can ride, and there's just all of these like interesting little, again, just bits of culture that I thought was like really fun and really cool. Anything else you guys want to add about the Gerudo before we get into Von Naboris or Chief Region?
I really just liked the region in general and how totally different it was. Like, yeah, you can say it was just like a desert, but it almost seemed like it snuck up on you, and then you're in full-on desert. No matter where you looked, there was dunes, mountains, cliffs, or villages, and like the sand was also blocking your vision, and it just kind of made you feel like you're in a completely different ecosystem, completely different region. Like, this game's massive, but like, let's be honest, it's not like an actual like location massive, but like in terms of like previous video games, I think the one small comment I'm going to add with this is like, so the Switch in general, it's hard to build scalable, good looking, big games. And I don't think anything needs to be any better looking, mechanically sound, or like as expansive as what Breath of the Wild did. And I think this level is a good example of it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I also loved about just the whole biome was you would stumble across a little you could tell it was a city that was just buried in sand.
Yeah.
And like there were a couple like statues like poking out from under, and if you used your magnesis you could see that there was chests underneath that you could pull out of the sand, and there were all of these cool little things to do, but it just gave hints of a world that previously existed and like very unique cultures that you weren't able to like see or experience right now, but like did exist.
Totally.
So so that's enough about the Gerudo. I think we can't talk about the Gerudo without talking about Chief Riju, who is like, I don't know, how old do you think she is? Like 12 years old or something? And she's like the queen, the princess who becomes queen of this area because her mother's disappeared. and you find her gigantic bodyguard right next to her, like keeping you at bay and keeping you in line at every step along the way. And what she basically says is, hey, I need you to go help find this like giant lightning helmet. And when you do, it gives you this like amazing ability to be able to approach Naboris, who's, what would you say, like this?
It's a camel, right?
He's a
camel?
giant camel.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's
giant camel. Yeah, so it's a giant camel that is shooting lightning all over the place, and the only way you can approach it is when you put on this like helmet made of gold with all these little lightning rods on it that prevent you from getting like struck. And in similar fashion to the other divine beasts, you end up riding one of the either your friends or their walrus right up to them until you can, get on top and take after
This
it.
one was like a carbon copy of like a Shadow of the Colossus level, because there's one in particular when one of the like colossi is walking, you have to shoot under their feet because that's where the weakness is. These weren't under the feet, but they were pretty close by, and it was like a giant walking in the desert kind of thing. I was digging it, but the surfing was hard to control, and I was glad that I was finally able to enter the Divine Beast rather than like spend a whole time leading up to it.
I'm glad that you said it, because I also was about to say that this is like this was probably the hardest Divine Beast just to approach for me. Like, it just took me so many tries, but I also like weirdly had the most fun with it. Like, I enjoyed the challenge just because, if I remember correctly, you're riding around and like you have to be in this very small circle, or else basically you'll just fail the mission. And then you just end up getting kicked out of it and then having to start it over. But I just found like the challenge was like just kind of, it was everything about this Divine Beast to me was just kind of like perfect. Like the challenge of getting there, the challenge of the boss at the end, I thought was all like really good.
Did you guys fight any of the, forgive me listeners, I don't know the actual name of the beast, but there are these gigantic beasts in the sand. They might be leviathans, they might be like sandworms or whatever. Whenever I saw them, I thought of Dune. But they basically like are in the sand and will come after you and are giant sand whales, I guess. Is maybe how to describe
I don't think
them.
I've...
You didn't face any of this?
I fought one of them, and it
Okay.
was a challenge that was like, it was definitely a challenge, but one that I like thoroughly enjoyed.
Gotcha. So when I fought those, I was using a walrus to get around, or a sand walrus, whatever we want to call them. And that gave me like a ton of practice for getting to the Divine Beast and handling that type of like attack, where there's this thing in the middle that you have to go after, and you also have to like control the walrus at the same time. Did you guys find the Great Fairy Fountain out there in the Leviathan's bones?
No, I did not.
No,
I
I did not. I
man.
definitely missed that.
Okay, so I spent a lot of time just like in the desert, just trying to figure out what's out there. And there is, like many parts of the map, these giant Leviathan bones. And when you get there, you see there's a Great Fairy Fountain, one of those big leaves with all of these little fairies around it, which honestly, one of the best lifesavers going into a boss battle, because you just grab as many of these fairies as you can. And when you die, they are released and they bring you back to life. And yeah, I thought the fairies were super cool. It was a different
hold on
way.
a minute. What did you say about the
Okay.
the fairies? They keep bring you alive? Like, what does that mean? Like, you don't die?
Oh, yeah. So like, the little glowing orb fairies?
I think I've seen
Not
that.
the great fairy,
Yeah.
the little glowing orb.
I've been able to grab
like
one.
Hey, listen.
Yeah.
Like one of those.
Like Navi
Yeah.
from
Yeah,
Over in
totally.
Asia. Yeah.
I didn't know
Exactly.
they did like any like act. Do you have to cook them or anything, or you just swallow them?
No.
Or what are we doing to these fairies?
Yeah. Don't cook your fairies.
Sorry.
listeners.
I was thinking, do I get
Don't-
long life? Is this like
You can try, but you might
Fountain
have
of
someone
Youth
show up
kind
at
of
your door.
stuff?
You might get a pixelated, like, ugly dish that Goron Ramsay would not be happy with. Yeah, but it is a super powerful ability to have one of those guys, or a couple of them, in your back pocket as an item. But yeah, I loved finding all of the fairies, and I used every opportunity I could to have them upgrade every piece of clothing that I had. Did you guys spend any time like upgrading those?
I did the first like mission where you see the first great fairy fountain past that one village, and then didn't really come back since. Because once I beat Ganon, I was like, okay, I'm good, I'm satisfied, kind of thing.
Fair.
I didn't beat. I found the first one. That's pretty obvious to find, and then I stumbled across a second one. Right near. I'm blanking on the name. The name of that village that you helped build up.
Oh, Terrytown?
Yeah.
Or Terraytown?
Yeah. I found there's one pretty close to there that I stumbled on.
Yeah. The side quest with Hudson that I think we'll talk a little bit more about later.
Yep.
I am too far into the Great Fairies to drop it. There is a Great Fairy. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a Great Fairy that is exclusively for horses. It looks like a horse. You know how they all look like these voluptuous, like, belly dancing women?
Yes.
Or mermaids or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, this one is a horse with a horse mask. And
of course it is.
We'll give you benefits for your horses instead of your armor and your clothing.
This is going to be the most Googled thing after listening to this podcast. Horse fairy.
Yeah. Make this #1 trending on Twitter. I'm begging for it. Come into the Discord and let me know if you also found the horse fairy.
Horse fairy and don't cook Navi.
Don't cook Navi.
Hey,
yeah,
listen.
Exactly.
Don't cook.
I'll tell you to listen. Yeah. Listen to this dish. So, okay. We talked a bit about the Gerudo. There are a ton of really fun little side quests there, but I don't think we have time to get into them all. Let's talk about Naboris and I think it's Thunderblight Ganon.
Yep.
What was your experience there, guys? How did you find it?
Okay, this was my most difficult Ganon by a long shot, because I was attempting it like to beat him for a while, and not to jump all the way to the fight, but like I got to a point where I was convinced, I'm like, how do you defeat this person without the electrical ability from the previous Divine Beast I did? So this is my 4th one that I did. And it got to the point when he kind of there's in each, I guess, blight, there's always like stages. It seems like there's like a first stage where they're doing a certain type of attacks, or a second or third or whatever it might be. Yep. This one, it got to like the second or last stage, and he's kind of all armored up and just charges. And I had no shields. I came into most of these fights like I don't know why. Like I'm assuming like there's not going to be a blight fight, but I always never had like health or the right shields, or I always used them up. This one in particular, I had nothing, and no matter what I did, I couldn't defeat him. And then I used the electrical ability, and that finally kind of shredded him enough to finish that last segment. But it was a very hard mission, like a blight for me.
Yeah, this was the only boss, like Blight Ganon that I actually like took a break from. That I went into the fight, died a few times, and then was like, all right, I feel like I need to level up some stuff, like get some new hearts, or like get some more stamina, or learn how to parry, or dodge at the correct time, which is very important in this fight. This is the only one I took a break from, and ended up going around and kind of did what Mike talked about earlier, like doing a lot of grinding in order to like feel ready for it. Yeah. And then came back and kind of squeaked it out. And also, it didn't clue into me right away for part of the fight that you have to use magnesis to sort of like stun him. Yeah.
I lucked out on that one. I just literally, I love the magnesis. I think I told you guys in the previous call, like I pretty much became Magneto, and like that was probably my second or third top used like weapon was the magnetism. Because if there's anything around there, I'm chucking it at you, like catch it. Hey, here's this fridge, catch like.
Yeah, I also found this to be a pretty difficult boss, but in the you guys both play Demon Souls or Dark Souls. Like once you complete it, you feel really proud of yourself. I felt really proud of myself completing this one. I didn't feel like this was like a walk in the park by any means, but also it didn't feel unfair. Like it felt like if I had learned the mechanics better, which I think it forced me to, I'd be able to knock him out no problem.
I don't want to sell myself short, but I think if I came to this Divine Beast first, I don't think there'd be any chance I could like beat it without like knowing the mechanics, knowing how to dodge, and just how to prop. So it's almost like this one. There might be. I'm not sure if there is, but there might be some kind of like block in the story where you might not be able to reach this one until maybe you beat another one. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like something similar to that. Whether it be like, hey, you have to like you need the jump ability like minimum or something. I'm not sure.
I think if you're a new like player, and not someone who's like speedrunning it and making a point, like this is an area that you're gate kept from by just like stronger macablins hanging around, like stronger enemies before you even get there.
This was the fight that made me stop cheesing the Lynels.
Oh, really? Did you? Wait, I want to get into like the Lynels after, but like I'm excited to see how you guys kind of fought some of them.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to talk through on the Lynel front, but we'll save that for the castle because I think that's where we face the most of them.
Totally.
So once you complete Naboris, you get I think it's Urbosa. That's the champion of this area. You get Urbosa's Fury, which let me tell you, that is my favorite champion's hero. It's not the one that I use the most, because I ended up hoarding a lot of like uses of it, because I think you get 3 before it depletes, and then you have to wait, I don't know, 20 minutes or whatever for it to come back. But it was the one that I loved the most. Like in any fight, if I felt like I was being like beaten down, or if I didn't have a chance, I would hold the attack button, I would charge up, and as soon as you let go, it shoots lightning down all around you and attacks all of the enemies around you. And it's just such a potent like stun or one-hit kill or like chunk of damage that I don't think I could have made it through the game. I couldn't have especially made it through Ganon without that one. Whereas, a lot of the other, hero benefits I felt like were really nice and useful, but I could have gotten through the game without them. Could not have gotten through the game without Urbosa's Fury. Wow,
I used it as often as I could, but in terms of like fighting, I find that like I don't know, they're all equal to me except for the jumping. That was like a utility tool in terms of like coming back to life, that ability and getting the extra few health, that was game changer for some of the boss fights because I could never get
Mipha's Grace.
Yeah. The shield from the salamander from the Gorons or whatever.
Yeah.
That one, there was so many. There's so
Ramsey.
many times when like I had no shield or nothing, or I had a weak one, and I'm just like banking on this deflection. I'm like, hit me and then die for some reason. Like I used that quite a bit, and I didn't start a fight without it. And you're right, even this one. This was like the attack one. This is the one where you're more aggressive with it, and it's probably your only aggressive attacked ability. So yeah, it is pretty good.
For me, it was key to taking down any of the Guardians, any of the like. I used it with the Lynels a ton. Like it was key for me in a ton of my fights.
I think my most used ability was Mipha's Grace, but that was not by choice.
Yeah, I don't think any one of us want to admit it, as much as that's probably true.
There's at least one moment when like I was really low health and I didn't want to eat my like food that I had made or whatever. So I kind of just took a few shots, revived, and I reset that like health timer, and that was my way of eating quickly.
Yeah, I kept a lot of the meals around that gave you not only full restore but like extra hearts.
Yeah.
So that way, whenever I got down to 2 hearts, I was like, I'm going to eat one of these before Mipha's Grace has to kick in.
Totally.
Or before I had Mipha's Grace. I think there's one more thing in this area that we should probably talk through, and that is the Yiga Hideout and Master Koga.
Yeah.
Set it up for me, guys. Like, how does this section work?
It's essentially the only stealth section of the game. And you basically
True.
And it's a lot of fun. You have to essentially sneak by all the, I can't remember the name, you just said it. What are they called?
The Yiga clan.
The Yiga clan. You got to sneak by all of them. And there's bananas everywhere, and these guys just love bananas. So you can kind of throw bananas out in order to. It's almost like, how like say in the Far Cry games, or like most stealth games, you could like throw a rock somewhere and they'll go after it. Essentially, for these guys, you can just drop a banana down and they'll go after it.
Yeah. So this. I don't understand what the like joke is. And we didn't set this up earlier, but the Yiga clan, for some reason, are out to kill you throughout the whole game. And you could stumble across some poor villager on your travels along a path, and they're like begging for help. And you go up and you say, "Hey, like, what's going on?" And they're like, "Haha,
Oh, that makes sense.
Time to kill you," right? And then they drop their disguise, like their Naruto character, and then have like this sickle in their hand that they start coming at you with. And every one of these Yiga clan that you kill drops like a rupee and bananas. It's just like this weird constant with them. I thought they were like a pretty cool I don't know, race or whatever that you end up bumping into.
Yeah, it was definitely a unique like NPC type or like group of NPCs that was nice to see. It was like just another thing this game does.
Change things up.
Yeah, it adds a new different thing, and you'd even see them around randomly though, like in like paths, and they always teleport, and it was always a tricky fight, but it's always a totally different fight than some of the other NPCs that just charge you and swing.
I agree with you so much, Galen, that it was the only area where you had to be stealthy, other than like maybe grabbing a horse or something. And I thought it was so rewarding to not use my big clunky like armor, to have to like eat food that made me more stealthy, to like, you know, figure out how to go about this without triggering a giant fight. But let me say, once you get the big katana from the guys in the Yiga clan, it was like one of the best weapons as far as I was concerned. It shot like a blade of air at people, so you could kill people up close and from afar.
Wow, I didn't use it once.
Get out of here!
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I really liked those guardian weapons, like even the small single-handed swords and like whatever it was. But man, your excitement for it made me upset because I'm like, that thing took a slot and I never like thought to use it. Like, I think I used it in like one of the shrines once. And I was like, oh, this shoots wind. Wind doesn't hurt anyone, and I switched it to something else.
It's so good. It's so good. I thought it was like a great weapon. I thought it was also super cool. I think I found one of those before I found the Yiga clan, from just some random person fighting up.
Oh, maybe that's what I found.
Middle of nowhere.
Was it hard to get the Yiga one?
Well, the only place I ever found it from that point forward was fighting the Yiga clan. Okay. But yeah, I had found it and I was like, this is so cool. Like, this guy, my Link's got a katana as big as him. And yeah, for a while I had it in my house, in Link's house, on the wall as like, here's one of my prizes. Yep. Before I had to make space for other weapons.
Can we dive into this Link's house? Because completely over my head. What?
Get
where,
out of here.
who? And
are you serious?
You can hide your swords?
Yeah. So, wait, Galen, did you do Link's house?
I did it. I don't remember a lot about it. Like, I remember doing it. I remember being able to display a bunch of your, like you said, weapons or like shields or whatever you had. Basically, there was just a spot for you. There were different spots for you to display different items that you collected. I just can't remember where it was. I do remember it cost a lot of money though.
So
it costs a lot of money. Go ahead.
So this essentially becomes Animal Crossing, is what you're saying?
Yes. Let me tell you, Mo. You missed out on the greatest disappointment in Breath of the Wild. It is such a letdown.
I'm happy.
You spend so much money on this house.
Yep.
Not only do you have to like give him a ton of money, but you have to give him a ton of wood too. So I just spent a ton of time chopping down trees. I'm like, this place costs so much.
Yep.
They are asking me to do so many things. This has got to be worth it, right? Like, it's got to make sense. It's got to work out. And let me tell you, once you get it, it's like, great, you can put up one weapon and one shield in this whole place.
My gosh.
There might be a bed to sleep. I doubt it. Who knows? There could be. Even that wouldn't be worth it. But then you go to yourself and you're like, okay, maybe I just need to update this thing. Like, maybe I just need to upgrade it. What if I upgrade it all the way? And I was like, okay, let's do that. Let's see if upgrading it all the way actually makes this worthwhile. Mo, I spent so much time, money, and effort upgrading this place. The only thing it did was give me more places to store weapons and shields.
This is great, because not only did I avoid the suffering, I get to enjoy it through you guys. That you guys have gotten to it.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I don't think I upgraded it all the way, but I think I got to a certain point where I kind of saw the writing on the wall and just went, all right, there's cooler things to experience.
You're a smarter man than I, Galen. You're a smarter man than I. I was a glutton for punishment. Or I just kept upgrading.
Or I'm just less patient, either one.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the former. Because yeah, it ended up just being a display room for all my Lynels that I killed. Because each Lynel I felt had different like equipment or weapons. Some had these like really insane swords. Some had these crossbows. Some had like crazy shields. Every Lynel that I killed, I put their like weapon and shield up there. Because while they were like really cool weapons to use, I wanted a trophy of like, oh yeah, I killed those big boys. They were mine. I think now it's probably time for us to get into Ganon, the castle, and the Lynels. We've talked a bit about the Lynels so far. Once you've defeated all the divine beasts, you're set up, which each of these divine beasts like shooting lasers at Ganon's shield at the castle, so that way you can approach and you can make a dent in it. And it is covered. This is the field that ended up like dominating me a ton and made me realize, no, stick to your lane, kid. Stick to the areas, stick to the rivers that you're used to, you know? There are just guardians at every turn. And unless you're like powered up and ready to fight them, it is just a slaughter.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's multiple routes, but essentially when you enter in Hyrule Castle, you go into like a new, well, not world, but mini world, where like now you're in Hyrule Castle, and it's either you get to the end and fight, or you kind of leave and have to exit it completely and start from the beginning, because there's no shrines in the actual Hyrule Castle. Once you're in there, it's a new mini mission kind of thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Once you get in there, the map changes, and it
Yeah.
becomes this like 3D map, which is really cool, and it kind of changes as you're moving around it, and it kind of gives you an idea of where all the tunnels are, which is a really cool way for them to kind of like further encourage that exploration, just to say like, hey, this is here. So if it is at that point your choice whether or not you just kind of want to just send it straight for Ganon, or if you want to take your time and explore it a little more. But kind of like Mike said, like the field to get there is pretty brutal at first. Once you're there, it gets a little bit easier just because there's more verticality that kind of gives you some shielding from all the guardians. But it's it's definitely, like we kind of talked about gatekeeping with that Medoh and the Gerudos, or sorry, that Naboris and the Gerudos. This place definitely gatekeeps you like right from the beginning.
Yeah. This is when I got to this area, when you see all the guardians, because correct me if I'm wrong, throughout the entire like playthrough, even when you're defeating the divine beasts, those crawler walker guardians that are like super strong are not that abundant. You only fight them in like weird situations. Most of the time you're avoiding them, whereas now that's like the common NPC. That's the most like abundant thing, so it's like you have to fight them. Did you guys? Well, maybe we should talk about our different paths and how we got up to Ganon. But like for me, when I just got the Master Sword, I just had like the minimum health I needed. I think it was like 10 or 11 like heart containers.
Man. You're crazy.
Well, I had just enough to get the Master Sword, and I was like, time to fight. Yeah. So no, but I found that I don't know if you guys did too, but like when you fight those guardians, you can like slice off their legs with like one swing of the sword, and like that for me, as soon as that happened, yes, their core body took a while to damage, but I just walked around in a circle, chopped them up, and then like just whacked them until they were gone, kind of thing. I didn't find them to be more of like a block. They seemed easier, I think, with the Master Sword.
It is very Dark Soulsy in that way until it's pretty hard until it's not, and then once you figure it out, it's pretty easy to get around them.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly. That's exactly how I feel about it. Like it was so intimidating until it wasn't. Like they oblige by the same physics as anything else in the game, so you can actually like flip them over or flip them on their side, and they can't do anything about it. It's like one of the best ways to like knock them out. But this was another one where I felt like Urbosa's Fury was just OP. Like you charge up while it's charging up, you let loose. Not only are you doing a ton of damage with the Master Sword or whatever you're using to fight them with, but like the lightning that rains down just completely resets them.
Yeah.
What I would say is this is the area where I realized like, oh, I need to learn how to parry. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I have to learn how to like send these bolts right back to them. And that's one of the things I did. I spent a bunch of time figuring out how to parry so that way I'd be able to make it pretty further. And I felt like I got so good with the parrying, and I set the game down for a while, and I think I had done everything up until like completing Ganon. And when I came back to it, I could not get the parry timing if my life depended on it. I was just destroyed.
Yeah, this game in general, it's hard to pick up. No matter, I don't know what the time is, but like if you leave it for a day and come back, I feel like you need a good chunk of time to like fight through things, to learn the rolls, the dodging, the stepping around. You're right, Mike. I can only imagine like getting up to Ganon and then having like the biggest fight, and your thumbs are not warmed up, like your response time is not warmed up, kind of thing.
So okay, so my way through this castle was I don't want to fight everyone along the way. There's a bunch of Ganon's Blight that's preventing me from just climbing a straight up path. I put on the suit that allows you to swim up waterfalls that you get with the very first Divine Beast. And I just went waterfall after waterfall all the way up until the first Lynel battle.
Okay.
What did you guys do?
I did something pretty similar. I did like a combination of swimming up waterfalls and then taking the path, and then eventually like seeing an opening into the castle and being like, oh, I'm going to go explore in there. I think I fought probably the first 2 Lynels that you can find, and then did some exploring. And then once I saw that there was more, again, this comes back to me being impatient more than anything. I was just like, I've already proved myself against you guys, and then Ravel is getting past, so guys.
Exactly. I think I literally fought 2 Lynels, and I was like, and I'm done. I don't want to fight any more of you. I'm just getting to the end.
I was gonna ask how many Lynels there are, because I powered my way through the natural path that tells you to climb up. So like fighting the Guardians, and then I beat the first Lynel. I felt pretty like comfortably. I had my like thumbs ready, and then the second one was like a grind, and then that's when I realized, hey, I can jump. Let's see if I can jump over this tower. And then once that happened, I was like Ganon after like maybe an hour of fighting kind of thing. But yeah.
I think there are only 2 Lynels in the castle.
Okay. So maybe I skipped the second one then. I fought him, kept getting beat, and then I jumped over him. But
so I think we should probably explain what these Lynels actually are. And guys, correct me if you feel like we should describe them in a different way. But as far as I'm concerned, they are Minotaurs. But instead of a human upper body, it is a human upper body with a lion's head on essentially a horse's lower body. And they have really strong weapons, can move very fast, and are just like one of the hardest things to fight in the game because they're the perfect combo of both strong and fast.
Yeah, like the every game has a super tough NPC that's like almost not even meant for the natural storyline. It's just like a challenge. This is it. This is the challenge NPC that's when it shows up, like unless you have a guardian arrow, you're going to spend a good chunk of time like whacking away and dodging, and parrying is a prerequisite as well, I feel.
I felt like they were so impossible when I first came across them. And as I was playing this game, I just started watching more and more Breath of the Wild stuff on YouTube. And I ended up stumbling across people who just totally demolish a Lynel in like 10 seconds and take no damage and have no issue with it. And that's when I realized you can hop on the back of the Lynels as if they're horses and like take them down that way. It was like a complete game changer for me.
Oh.
That and each Lynel was different in that like some shot lightning, some spit fire. Like each one had different attacks. So like one strategy didn't necessarily apply to the next.
Yeah, and I think it's a visual cue that tells you what they're going to do. Is that right? Like there's like a red Lynel, a white one, and like I can't remember what other ones, but there's a good way to like kind of tell, okay, this one's super hard, I can't fight him right now, or this one's super easy, it's easy gems and easy weapons I can kind of pick up.
Yeah, the one that I thought was the hardest was the Lynel that shoots electric like arrows at you, because you just can't wear your best armor around him because you're going to get electrocuted and you're going to drop your weapons while you're fighting him if he hits you at any point.
Was that the white Lynel? Or was he a different color?
I don't remember.
They were just all scary to me.
I just remember the first Lynel I crossed paths with in the game. This is like very early on. This must have been like less than 2 hours in. And it was way off in the distance, and I just remember it was white, and I was just like drawn to it. I was like, I'm gonna go try and fight that thing.
I'm gonna go touch it.
And I got humbled very quickly. I tried for it killed me. I don't remember how many hearts I had. It was less than 5 for sure. And then I think I died in one shot, and I was like, all right, it's not the time yet.
So early on in the game when I was like exploring the map and trying to like unlock as much as I could, I got on a random boat on the edge of the map and just started like using the Korok leaf to like get myself around, and I stumbled across this island and I was like, oh my god, look, there's like 3 chests here.
Yep.
And I walk over to the chests and I just see like the boss bar at the top say you're in a boss fight, and I was like, oh no. And I was one shot killed by like a charging Lynel, and I was like, nothing in the world could be in that chest that's worth it for me to fight this guy right now. The Master Sword could be in there, and it would not be worth it for me to fight this guy right now. So I also got humbled very early on by the Lynels. I guess what we're trying to say is the Lynels are pretty hardcore.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you have to fight 2 of them along your way through the castle, as well as deal with a bunch of the Guardian sentries, turrets, and Guardians themselves, as well as the like patrolling ones. There's just a lot of moments where you have 3 red lasers on you, and it's beep, 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 and you know these like laser beams are going to come at you, and you either need to like duck into cover or get ready to take some damage or parry. But yeah, it's a tough climb to get up there.
I think
especially if you're not ready.
I think it was a very appropriate climb too. Like I felt like that matched. It really matched the moment, I thought, of like essentially what the entire game is building to. And I think a lot of stuff about that climb was just felt very appropriate for the game you had played up until then, because the music was great, and there was different music whether or not you were like inside the castle or you're like on the approach to it. It was the same, but it sounded the same, but it was just like very slightly different. And all the fights on the way there were very epic, and everything about it was just like, I thought it was like an appropriate crescendo to the game.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think they do a great job of kind of like letting you know, if you can't handle this, you won't stand a chance against Ganon.
Yeah.
Like these are the skills you need to know to be able to like handle it. Which, I mean, I don't know if we want to get too much deeper into the castle, but I thought it was just kind of cool to see Hyrule Castle in like a state of disarray, while still looking familiar. Like you can tell this was, a place where royals hung out at a time.
Yeah, you can sneak into some spots, and there's like a big dining hall, and you're just like, oh, but it's like decrepit, and there's enemies in there, and it just has like a very like weird feeling to it. It's almost like going to Anor Londo in Dark Souls, where you're just like, this is really cool, but also this is like very creepy.
Yeah, I didn't even explore the castle at all. As soon as I got in, I'm like, Ganon, me and you, 1v1, let's go. Besides that, I'm like, I don't care what's around here. We could be fighting on like a chessboard. I have no idea what's around here. I have my target. I'm going for it.
This feels a lot like you just skipping through dialogue, like having a little bit more curiosity. You'd experience some cool stuff.
Ganon, but talk.
Yeah. Speaking of Ganon, let's get into it. Anyone want to set us up for what that battle looks like or how it starts?
So essentially, like a lot of bosses in video games, it's a 2-phase fight. The first phase is you fight Calamity Ganon, and he's essentially kind of like what Mo just touched on. He is like an amalgamation of all the blights that you just fought.
Kind of like a spider, right?
Yeah.
Like a fat, hairy spider.
Yeah, exactly. And he moves around pretty quick, but his attacks, he telegraphs them pretty well in advance.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, too, that's important to touch on is that if you've done all the 4 Divine Beasts, the cutscene that plays before you fight Calamity Ganon is that it shows all of them, and they basically charge up their lasers, and they shoot him, and then it cuts his health in half for that first phase of the boss fight.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my god. I didn't realize it was possible to do it without defeating all the Divine Beasts first, but let me tell you, that for me was like it felt like it channeled all those moments in my childhood of like all the Transformers or all the like the Megazord was being formed. Totally. And like, like the Power Rangers were coming together for one more time. It just felt like the most like, I just wanted a heavy metal guitar to go like, go Power Rangers. It just was so good.
Totally. And it's like, I think the big thing to like point out too is like, each one takes away like each divine beast you complete takes away like 1/8 of their health. I looked it up like afterwards. So if you fought essentially 2 of them and wanted to fight Ganon right away just because you thought you were tough, then you have 75% of his health to deal with. If you didn't fight any of them, then you have 100% health of Ganon to fight. Which for me, when it got chunked in half, I'm like, thank you, because like it still was like a lengthy fight. I could only imagine trying to hack him away with like BS like swords or like shields or whatever it might be. It'll be insane to fight him with full health.
It took me, so stage 1, Calamity Ganon, it took me using Urbosa's Fury and winding up the Master Sword to just really take him down. And then as soon as like, it was concerning with how little damage I was doing when he was on the walls, like shooting arrows at him, shooting other things, especially when he starts glowing red or orange. I was like, man, I don't know how to do this. Like, I need Urbosa's Fury to like take him down a peg again, to like stun him or whatever.
Totally. I wasn't even stocked either, so like I had to be strategic with all of my shots. I had to make sure all of my health was reset before I started this fight. And I think he had a bunch of arrows around like the arena that you could kind of like just pick up and kind of use, because I didn't have any. It was like hoping he'd come close and maybe I can peg him in the eye, kind of thing.
Whoa, kinky.
I think he took me probably 2 tries to get. I remember, I mean, that's including Mipha's Grace on both tries. But yeah, I don't know what it was, but for some reason, I just like felt like I think I went in like I kind of talked about this entire podcast, is I went in like way over prepared. I went in with like a lot of arrows and just like a lot of very strong weapons. And I was like, all right, I'm ready for this.
Same. I went in like stocked to the gills with food, with weapons. The only thing that I didn't have was shields, because I think I had broken a bunch, like sand surfing or surfing down mountains on them, which was something I only figured out how to do like late in the game. I only figured that you could just like ride your shield down the mountain at the end.
Yep.
I don't know how to do that.
But
I have not a single shield broke. Not a single one. I think maybe from fighting, but like not from my like leisure. I don't break shields with leisure.
Not for sport.
Yeah.
Okay, so you make it through stage 1 of Ganon, and what happens? You face Horsey Ganon.
Yeah, I remember it's Dark Beast Ganon, and Zelda tells
Yeah.
you to shoot him in the light spots, and that's about all I remember.
So there are these
And you're on the
like
course, yeah.
Yeah, and so you basically get like Zelda's royal horse, all white, with like the Triforce like reins or harnesses on them, and you have to ride around Ganon and take this like OP arrow. Was it arrow?
Yeah,
or
it's light arrows. I'm gonna
light arrows.
double check on
yeah,
that. But
that
sounds
she
right.
gives you. And there are these, I don't know how to describe them other than, in Doctor Strange, the like little portals that he makes with his hands, like those, they're like those
That's a great
on
explanation.
like different like points in Ganon, and you just have to make sure your arrow hits like one, like, I don't know, 3 targets or whatever, and then he moves on to the next like part of it. And you just eventually do that a couple times. You just keep hitting these different like light sources. And then it's like, okay, hit him in the eye. So you've seen Ganon's eyes in his blight and all of these things throughout the game that you've had to shoot an arrow into, and then it just, it destroys it. It disappears. It opens up the path for you. This is the one last time where you have to do that. And you basically just wait for him to shoot his beam at the ground. It creates this massive updraft, and you pull out your glider, you get up there, and you wait until the eye starts opening up, and you cast 1 arrow into it, and GG. This is like the softest Ganon battle I think I've ever played.
2 points, just one, a correction. You are given the Bow of Lights for this final phase of the fight, and yeah, it is kind of everything that I said about it. Felt like leading up to it, this perfect crescendo of the game. It does kind of fall flat at the very end there.
Yeah, and I guess it doesn't really matter, spoiler alert, but like once you defeat him, he still exists in the game. That, for some reason, sat kind of weird with me. I'm like, oh, okay, it's just for replayability, but in my head, I'm like, wait, did I not beat him? I actually Googled it after, like, what to do after defeating Ganon, and some kind soul online was like, you beat him, he always is there, and you can fight him again, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it does a weird video gamey thing that not all games do, but sometimes they do, is where they just kind of kick you back to right before you start the final mission, basically like your most recent save before you start that whole trek up to Hyrule Castle, which is, I don't know what the other option was for them, but it was kind of it was like a weird feeling after, like you just completed the main objective of this game, and then you're kind of kicked back like it never happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of a disappointment after such an amazing like experience of the game. Still, I guess it's hard to wrap up a game this big with this much leading up to it. But legit, one of my favorite moments in that boss battle was just seeing the 4 divine beasts come together to shoot their like supercharged light beam at him and knock him down a peg. Okay, so we've tackled the divine beasts, we've tackled Ganon. I think there's one more thing that we really need to tackle before we close this up. And I think in the interest of time, let's keep it to one each. What were some of your, like, what was your favorite weird side event or story or side mission or thing that you noticed as in the process of playing the game?
So for me, another thing I encountered early on that, again, humbled me very quickly was the spirit dragons. And if you've never encountered them or if you haven't played this game, essentially what they are these like massive dragons that are kind of like, they're not your typical like Skyrim looking dragons. They look more like these like kind of snaky dragons, and they have like just this.
They're like Shenron.
Yes, exactly. So they're kind of just you're just walking around minding your own business, and you look off, and then there's this big Shenron looking dragon, and he's just off in the distance. And if you're me, you're just kind of like, I'm just gonna go over there and see what that's about. A smarter person probably would have just cruised on by, because that thing's like 300,000 times the size of you. So I approached him, and then I think I don't think he's aggro to you unless you aggro him first. So I shot him with an arrow, and then he probably killed me in one shot. So it was just like, all right, I'm going to move on. I'm going to come back to this later in the game when I'm stronger or have a better idea of what I'm doing.
I thought those dragons were such an interesting addition. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just such a cool addition.
No, I completely agree. I think the point that they were going for is for you to just be like, what is this majestic beast? And that is exactly how I felt when I saw it. I just was completely drawn to it. But there's 3 of them in the game. Their names there's Dinral, Farosh, and then there is Nadra. I believe the one that I encountered first was Dinral. That was the one that killed me right away. And then I encountered Nadra spontaneously and was able to... you don't kill him. What he does is he's covered in the calamity, and essentially you cleanse him of it, and then he gives you some rewards.
So I did that one. I cleansed Nadra. I found Dinral's scale super early, and I saw Farouche, which is I think the lightning one on one of the more tropical areas. But Dinral is the one that I was flying through a canyon between 2 separate areas, and I was like, oh my god, I could just hop on top of him, right?
Yeah,
everything else in the game, you could get on top of him. So I jumped off the cliff, and because he's essentially fire, there's updrafts all around him.
Yep.
And I was able to glide right on top of him, and I dropped to land on him, and I just took a series of damage. Because you are not supposed to touch them. You are not supposed to be able to land on them. I just basically rolled off of him in fire, taking damage every bit of the way down him. It was it was like 3 Stooges walking through the door at the same time. It was you had the right idea. It just, your execution was wrong.
Man, so for half that, I was dead silent because I didn't realize there was dragons. And if anyone doesn't know there's dragons in Breath of the Wild, just type in Breath of the Wild dragons and watch the majesty that it's spot on. Exactly. It's like Shenron the dragon from the Dragon Ball Z, but also the traditional dragons.
It's a Chinese dragon.
Yeah, the ones you see on people's tattoos and stuff. This is sweet. This is something that would make me want to go back.
They are absolutely enthralling to look at.
Yeah,
they're so cool.
Just because they were nowhere in the game, and that's how it makes it that much cooler. That if you stumbled across one of these, I can only imagine I'd lose my mind.
I took a bajillion photos of them at night, and I think one of the other things is they showed up super early in my playthrough of the game, 1 or 2 of them, and I was like, this world is amazing. They've just got dragons flying around in the middle of the night. And you can just take a photo of them, and I was like, oh my god, I can see his name too. I don't. This means I'm going to be able to interact with him later.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm wondering if you miss it if you play in the handheld because it's such a small screen. Maybe my eyes are getting there.
Maybe
potentially.
But it could be when you play it on a big screen, you'll see something flying across, and you'll be like, oh yeah, let's go see that. But I didn't see these at all in the world, or even had a clue. If you guys didn't bring it up, I would have just never known about it.
Yeah, what a great addition.
Cool.
Mo, what was your weird side event?
Nothing as cool as that, but I did talk about how I love the Master Sword, like just the arc of it, like seeing it, working for it, eventually getting it. But in order to get it, I had to go on like the shrine quest essentially, to explore the whole map. And well, one thing I discovered was that little island. I'm not sure if you guys saw it, where there's it almost looks like it's too far to fly to. Because like every single cliff I went to the highest cliff I could find. I tried jumping and I'll die before it. And then you come to essentially realize that you just have to kind of get to a little smaller island. It has one of those little boats that you use your Korok leaf to blow yourself across. And as soon as you get there, you get kind of notified that this is a challenge where you, in order to like finish the challenge and get the shrine, you just have to like move these like balls into certain locations to unlock the map. And how it starts is you wake up on this island. You lose all of your items. You're pretty much in a loincloth or just your underwear or whatever.
You're playing a game of Survivor.
Exactly. And it's like, hey, get off the island, and like you have to figure it out. So there's the small little NPCs, there's something mini missions and puzzles. But I thought it was really cool that like during my, and not annoying, but when you're grinding out something in a game, sometimes you can kind of become a chore. And this one, I found that like I stumbled across it during my quote unquote chore, and it made it so much better. I'm like, oh, this is totally worth like grinding out a shrine because it's so cool. I'm like starting a little Survivor mini game.
This is Eventide Island, right?
I'm not sure. I don't know if that's the name, but it might be.
I believe it is. It's the one where you get there and essentially just kind of a cutscene doesn't play, but the screen goes to black really quick. And
Yeah.
it basically strips you. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a cool kind of moment where it's almost like they taught. It's like a look where you've come from moment, because this is how you started the game. Is you started the game with like no resources and having to learn how to manage anything you come across. And then it gives you the opportunity to like kind of go back to that, and also which again, like a cool moment that just shows you like how much better you've got at the game, in addition to like how much the weapons and all the gear that you've accumulated kind of means to you.
I think it's so cool that you guys got to it at the end of the game. You know when I was saying like early on I faced that Lynel that I stumbled across? I stumbled across that Lynel just after I had given up on this island, because I found this like pretty early in the game, and I was like, oh man, like this is like a cool, interesting little challenge. But I found it less cool and more frustrating because I didn't know how to play yet. But I found the experience of like having to like figure out how you get a weapon and how you like create your own meals and get your own stuff. This was also one of the first places that I saw like lightning strike the ground, create a fire in the grass, and create an updraft. Mm-hmm. Like all of these really interesting ways. I feel like I learned a ton about the game just from playing through this at an early stage, even though I definitely didn't beat it until later.
Mike, what was your, moment?
Okay, so I think I'm going to have to go with the Lord of the Mountain, which is this... I think you're given like this quest early on, or you're given multiple quests. One is like get a photo of like the spirit of the forest or whatever, which are these like they look like rabbits that are glowing blue that have like a wreath on their head, and they're just hopping around, and they're tough to find. But there's this one mountain. Don't ask me what it's called, but it's got a bunch of cherry blossom trees on it, and it's got this like little waterfall, and it's super kind of out of the way. It looks pretty barren, and if you go there at a certain time of night,
I know exactly. What you're talking about, yeah.
Exactly. You go there at a certain time of night, on a certain day. Don't ask me how I figured out what day, what time, where to go. But when you go there, you see, I don't know, maybe dozens of these little rabbit bunnies, like spirit rabbit bunnies that are blue. That are otherwise incredibly rare and hard to see. And they're all around this lake, or not even a lake, a little pond. And in the center of the pond is this weird horse spirit thing that is like horse body up until like the face. And then it's got like Cthulhu's face, I guess. And it's all blue, and it's like the spirit of the mountain, or the Lord of the Mountain. And you can just get on his back like a horse and ride him. And he's got like infinite stamina. The only downside is you can't like keep him in a stable. You know, he's legit free.
I don't think I experienced that. I know where you're talking about, but it just didn't happen for me.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
I had to
it
Google
is. I was freaking out. I felt like I'd stumbled across. Not stumble across. Like I felt like I had completed something super hard because I did not look up in a guide anywhere how to do this. And when I finally got there, I was like, "Oh my god, this paid off insanely well for me." Even though I didn't get to like keep anything from it, it was such a cool, unique experience that I'll never forget.
Man, I wonder because this one is just as cool. I just Googled it while you were talking, Mike, to see what it looked like. And yeah, it's essentially exactly how you explained it. It's a glowing night
It's a
glowing
radioactive horse.
Yeah, and
with Cthulhu's face.
and the face, it seems like it looks like two owls kind of like faces side by side, but like I could be wrong. That's the best thing I can kind of explain.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's so cool. I wonder how many more of these like weird creature slash mind-boggling like and characters that you'll never see unless you kind of explore. There's probably a whole list of them online somewhere.
There's so many. There's another one that has like a soft spot in my heart, and that's Terrytown or Terraytown, where you have to go find Hudson and help him collect all the people to build that town. I'm not sure I completed all of it, but that was such a fun, weird, quirky thing that I had a lot of fun with along the way.
I came across it, and I think I threw it in the box with Link's house, and I just saw infrastructure and the ability to build in this game, and it's just like, I'm not making this mistake again. But I have seen videos on essentially what happens if you do follow through, and it does look very cool.
Again, smarter man than I, Galen. Smarter man than I. Okay, boys, I feel like we have discussed Breath of the Wild to death. One of my favorite games. I'm so impressed by this game, even still 5 years on from its release. So impressive. I'd recommend it to just about anyone who's ever gotten a Switch. I'm so glad that we decided to play it, and I'm sad that I didn't play it sooner. What closing thoughts do you guys have on Breath of the Wild?
To me, I had an emotional roller coaster with it because I started playing for like a month, kind of walked away from it. Thought it was like I didn't like the whole fact that I had to figure out where to go. I just kind of want some kind of like beacon or some ways for someone to tap me along or like give me hints. Walked away from it, but then when I came back, I came to the realization that this is probably it's the best Switch game. Not only best Switch game, it's one of the best games you can like play in like the current generation of like new video games because of how like the scope and how many things that you can do, discover, and still not pretty much put a dent into it. That puts it up there for me. I do play a lot of Hades on the Switch, so it's tough for me to say it's my favorite Switch game, but it's definitely like a 1A 1B kind of situation, and I probably give it to Breath of the Wild just because of how it's so massive. So a very pleasant experience, probably one of my favorite games I've played in general, and I'm glad that this is like this is the Zelda game that I've played and enjoyed, and it seems to be the best one out there as well. So it definitely lives up to the hype, which is something not everything can do. It's
such a paradigm shift. Like games are clearly they're gonna have to be different after Breath of the Wild. It's like Mario going 3D for the first time. That's how I feel about this game.
Yeah.
Galen, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Mo put it perfectly when he said it lives up to the hype. Like, I did not play this on release when it first came out, and then it was one of those games that before I bought a Switch, that was you kind of always heard about, and it was like, you need to play Breath of the Wild. Like, it's just different. Like, it's just something special about it. And then it lived up to the hype. And for me, like, I don't have like a top like 5 video games or my top 5 favorite video games all time, but like that definitely holds a spot in there somewhere. It definitely hits a very special place in video games for me. It's like up there with like the Dark Souls of the world, where it's just like it changed the way that you view video games and changed out of what you want out of a game. Every game that kind of like fits in that genre after is you're going to compare it to it. Whether or not that's fair to the other game, who knows? But a lot of games have tried to borrow elements from Breath of the Wild, and they just haven't been able to like kind of recreate the experience.
Yeah, and it's like almost the not the gold standard, but kind of like the gold standard for if you're going to bring in an adventure game on the Switch, you have to be better, which is like almost impossible for like a small studio or a small team to do. But like now everyone's like, okay, well, is it better or worse than Breath of the Wild? And that's what it's always going to be compared to.
And I do think it is like a very unique experience to the Switch, and just like a unique experience to gaming in general. Like, there's a lot of stories or experiences that you could kind of like take from a video game and tell that story in a movie or a book or something, and it'll be mostly similar. It'll be like mostly the same, but like Breath of the Wild is very much exclusive, like a exclusively video game experience to me.
Yeah. The only way that this could be better is if the Switch controller had the A, B, X, Y buttons in the correct position.
Totally.
Like I spent so much time where it was like, press B, and I'm
pressing it.
Pressing A, because it was in the wrong spot.
I'm pressing B. You recognize B.
I know where B is.
Don't
you don't. Don't you dare tell me I've got that
Where
wrong.
I come from, Xbox.
Exactly. All right, boys, as we wrap up the show, I think we should figure out where we want to send people. Galen, what do you want people to know about you? Where can people find you? What does that look like?
If you'd like to see some more video game content from me, I do some streaming over on Twitch. So that's going to be at twitch.tv/Havey, but it's spelled H4VEY.
What are you playing these days?
Right now, I'm going through the Dark Souls series. I've beaten Dark Souls 1 twice. I'm making my way through Dark Souls 2, and I'm just going to keep on running through basically every FromSoft game until I get bored of them.
Amazing.
And if you want to see some other stuff, more like real life adventure content or real life content, whatever, my Instagram is Galen Havey. That's GalenHavey.
Living life in the Pacific Northwest or the west coast of Canada. Very picturesque and scenic. Mo, where can the people find you at?
You can find me hanging out on Galen's Instagram on some of these little mountain adventures, but you can find me on most social media platforms at mmertati.
Making me jealous.
Totally. No, you're always welcome, Mike. I mean, the couch is waiting for you if you ever want to visit.
Okay.
But we play Souls together too.
Oh my gosh, it's so much better when you have like friends to play it. It's awesome. But yeah, you can find me on almost all social media platforms at mmertati, but also sitting in the Discord server, which can be found at leftbehindgame.club or leftbehindgameclub.com. If you actually go to the website, we have a little button that you can click, and that button will send you directly to our Discord server, where you can come chat with a bunch of people, talk about games that are coming out, deals, and everything in between. I really like the community that we have here, and always looking for more people to join the conversation. Mike, where can the fine folks find you?
The fine folks can find me at all places online at RuffaloM, RUFFOLOM. Or you can find me at my website, michaelruffalo.com or .ca, if you're looking for me in a professional capacity. And if you're looking for me when I have a chance to hang out and chat with the fine folks, you can find me in the Discord at leftbehindgameclub.com and that big button in the middle. We've got a great community of people sharing free games, deals, codes, talking about the latest reveals and announcements. Just about everything's there if you want to come hang out and talk to some really cool people. And that, my friends, I'm very glad to say, is one less game left behind.